Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I wanted to talk about something that Norman Reedus actually said today in an interview. I saw this here from bleedingcool.com, but yeah, I'll leave a link down below in the description of that if you do want to read the whole thing here. But Norman Reedus actually confirms here that he thinks he'll be playing Daryl Dixon for, and I quote, maybe 6 or 7 more years. So I want to break down his exact comments here and give some thoughts on that as a whole. And yeah, so make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all of my Walking Dead content like this. Comic-Con is in like 3 weeks from now, pretty much exactly today, so we're going to get a bunch of details right away. I believe on July 8th actually is when we're going to be getting an update on the panel and everything, so that's in 3 days from now, so look forward to that day. It says the week of July 8th, so maybe it's not exactly that day, but I feel like it's probably going to be on that day. So yeah, July 8th is the day that I'm looking forward to see the next big update here in terms of like panels and all that, because in 3 weeks from now we're getting the official trailer for season 2, right? So on season 2 and Daryl Dixon and all that, just kind of in general, Norman Reedus actually did an interview today. He spoke about how long he thinks he'll be playing Daryl Dixon for, and what he said here, and again, I got this from bleedingcool.com, but he says, I think maybe 6 or 7 more years. The Daryl Dixon spinoff has given me an opportunity to take the show in a direction that's different to the original show. I didn't want to make the same show again in a different location. I wanted to reinvent it, and they let me, with the other like-minded people involved, invent something new. So it feels fresh to me. It's in a different language. It's shot in a different way. It's not really about zombies and who's going to get bit this week. It's completely different. So as long as I keep reinventing it, it's fun, Reedus shared. And it's kind of funny about that last part there, about like who's going to get bit this week, right? Like who's going to die this week. That used to be such a thing like years ago. And I never liked watching The Walking Dead for that. But so many people, and like when the ratings were so high, like really, really high in ratings, I feel like a lot of those fans watched just to see when the next person was going to die. And like if no one died for like 4 or 5 episodes, or if a premiere or finale wasn't like really amazing, where there was like a big death or big moment, then people complained about it. But like honestly, I like those moments, and you do need to have them here and there. Like you do need to kind of balance all of it. But I watched the show because I like the characters and I like the story and the world. So I think that's what I'm really liking about the spinoffs here, is that it's not about just like, oh, that this person's going to be dying this week and sort of mapping all like the character deaths out, and you know what I mean? It's focused a lot on the story and whatnot. And yes, you still are getting character deaths, but as Norman Reedus says, it does feel very fresh. Like these spinoffs feel really amazing. Like it feels really awesome to actually watch them. So on what he says here about 6 or 7 more years, I think that's honestly really incredible. I mean, that's kind of what I expected anyways. Like in my head, I've always said that, like, you know, I can see the end game scenario for all of these characters being in about 2030. Because to me, like Rick and Michonne could come back and do another spinoff in like 2027, 28 or something like that, right? Like somewhere around there, maybe it's 2029. I don't know, like 27, 28, somewhere around there. And then I could see the reunion or like endgame spinoff being like after that, or like around 2030, 31. And then around that point, you know, it'll have been like 20 years since the TV show started. So I think it's a really good time to end it and sort of, you know, tell the next story afterwards. Because The Walking Dead is not going to end. Like that's the thing that I think we've all learned at this point now, is that The Walking Dead will never end. Sure, these characters might, you know, their stories might be done, and a lot of people might stop watching then, but they'll do a next generation show. Like they will do that. Like even if they're like, well, we're going to take 4 or 5 years off or something like that, there's going to be interest in it. You know, like people are going to want to see that. And imagine if they don't bring like a lot of the characters from the Commonwealth arc back into the story by 2030. I think by the time you do a next generation spinoff in the early 2030s, then you could bring all of them back, right? Like you can bring all the characters back from Alexandria and the Commonwealth and whatnot, and they'll just be much older. You know, Judith and RJ will be much older. And then it just sort of feels like a new show with like a new story, and you could sort of tell a story from that point on, and that will be like the main, obviously, like sort of sequel to The Walking Dead, right? And I could just see that happening. I really do see that happening. And like at some point in the early 2030s, it just makes sense to me. Some people don't like that. I know some people just want the story to end, but you have to look at like Star Trek and all of that. And I know whenever I compare it to like franchises like that, people say, well, you can't compare it to Marvel and all that. It's not the same. Well, it is sort of the same thing. It really is. Like, maybe not in terms of the universe and how you can connect things. Maybe it's not exactly the same, you know, in terms of how you can do crossovers and all of that. But you can still do that on a smaller scale. But also, The Walking Dead is a franchise, right? Like, it's actually a franchise. The smart decision by, like, AMC or whoever owns The Walking Dead is to make stories in that world. That's sort of what, you know, if you're a creator, that's sort of what you want. Like, if you're writing a story in general, you want to be able to build up a world that's really amazing and people like to just sort of live in. Like, it's not going to end anytime soon. Like, The Walking Dead is not Breaking Bad anymore. Breaking Bad, like, that's a certain story, you know, like there's a certain world there and all of that, but the intention there behind the writers is to just sort of tell the story and just like complete it. With The Walking Dead, they'll complete certain character stories, but they're going to keep the overall story in that world going. And I think it makes sense because it's a zombie apocalypse world, right? Like, it's an apocalyptic world. You can so do that and have that make sense. So Norman Reedus saying, you know, 6 or 7 more years. In terms of the Daryl Dixon show, I guess that would make it go up to like, what, season 8 or season 9? Assuming he's going to play Daryl Dixon all the way till the end of that show specifically. There might be like, you know, an Endgame spinoff here or there, or like, I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But I think that is sort of honestly how I view the Daryl Dixon show, is that it's probably going to last that long. Like, it's really insane to say, and I know it seems crazy because we've only had 1 season so far, but it's just because of what Norman Reedus said here. Like, he wants to play Daryl for another 6 or 7 more years. And so if the show ends in like, I don't know, after season 4 or 5, so in like 2 or 3 more years or something, then where would he play Daryl Dixon, right? Like, I think that just means to me that they're probably going to be doing this spinoff for really the remainder of the 2020s. It's going to be all the spinoffs and all that. And then, you know, to me, I kind of like that. I like how that looks. Like, the 2010s were like the original series, you know, the 2020s were all the spinoffs. And then the 2030s, I mean, technically it's still a spinoff, but it could be the next generation kind of thing. And I think that's exciting because there's a lot of story that you can tell. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you're able to tell within all of that there. And that's one thing that I will also point out as well. Like, Norman Reedus is saying that right now, you know, but in 6 or 7 more years, once it's like, all right, we're gonna, you know, end this here, this is gonna be the end of Daryl's story, things might change at that point where he's like, oh, I want to come back and do this. And maybe he takes a break. Maybe he actually needs a break finally, and he's gone for like 5 or 6 years, just like Andrew Lincoln was, right? And then maybe he's like, no, I want to come back and do like another Daryl story. Like, depending on how his story ends, maybe Daryl dies at the end, but you know what I mean? Like, I could just see this continuing for the next however long, because I just look at Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine. Like, you thought that ended so long ago, and now he's coming back here with Deadpool and Wolverine, right? Like, and he might also play in more movies after this. So that's my point with all of this here, is we don't really know, but just expect these characters, if they don't die, then they're most likely going to keep coming back. And Norman Reedus saying that, you know, he wants to play Daryl Dixon for another 6 or 7 years, for me personally is very exciting because I really love Daryl Dixon as a character. The story does have to be good though, because if the story does get to a point where it's like, you know, it's hard to watch, then I don't know if I'm going to care too much. Like, Fear the Walking Dead was that type of show where season 6 got really, really, like, I was enjoying the story again. And then season 7 and 8 got to the point where I was like, okay, you got to end the show. And I remember saying that after season 7, I was like, you just got to end the show now. Like, personally for me, reviewing it and watching it, it just got so hard. And they did end it finally. And, you know, you don't want Daryl Dixon or Dead City to get like that. I don't think it's going to, though. Like, I don't think those stories will get to that point, but the point is, you do have to make it refreshing. You do have to make the story, you know, just that exciting for fans and all that. And right now, they're in a really good place. Like, Daryl Dixon ended in a really amazing way where they introduced variant walkers and all of that. And we're about to get the next show here. The finale is supposed to be really insane. I know there's supposed to be, like, I don't want to say more variants, but the variants don't like kill each other. At least that's sort of something that I'm expecting here for the second season. And, you know, there could be some character deaths. A character could become a variant walker. Like, the finale is supposed to be like one of the best moments in Walking Dead television ever. Like, the best 1 hour of Walking Dead anything ever, whatever Norman Reedus said. So, you know, if that's true and the season 2 finale is that, then that's just a new, you know, a really big iconic moment that The Walking Dead has. And that's happening later on this year. Like, yeah, you're going to keep continuing the story after that. So I personally do not have an issue with it. I don't see a lot of people having an issue with it. Honestly, I look online and a lot of people are so excited about that. Like, and that's the thing, when I look online, I do see people like overall excited about it. Like, yeah, you're going to see a few comments of people saying like, oh, like the show was done, this and that, like, oh, it's never going to end or whatever. But those comments have been there forever. Like, those comments on The Walking Dead ending have been there since like, what? I feel like season 7 or 8 is when all that started. Like, it was a long time ago now, to the point where it's always going to be a thing. Whenever they announce a new spinoff or a new season or a trailer comes out or just anything, everyone's going to be like, oh, is the show still on? Like, it's a thing. Even with The Ones Who Live, that show was so like exciting, you know, all the hype going into it and all that. And people were still saying that, you know, even though, yes, more people watched that show, but it was still a thing. People still said that. I also want to point out that most people were really excited about, you know, I guess the future here in the next, like, however many years because of the Ones Who Live and, like, the CRM arc and all of that. And I know the CRM arc was disappointing. Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrera, they will be back to play some sort of story. It's probably, like, the CRM will be somewhat, you know, connected because obviously they're a part of it, but it's going to be a different story. So that's that. But I know with the CRM, I know a lot of people were disappointed with that. Like, that's, you know, even for me, I was definitely disappointed in it, but I look at it now and I'm honestly not that disappointed anymore because there's ways that you can sort of fix it. Like, yes, the excitement of what could be was always sort of there, but there were also issues that I had, you know, if they were to continue the CRM arc. And I've always mentioned that too. Like, if Morgan was to show up in, like, the finale cliffhanger, right? Like, I've always said that, like, you know, a season 2 where that would go, like, Morgan and then Michonne and Rick would all be at the CRM, and, like, what, they all can't talk? Like, where would the story go at that point? Like, it would be so difficult to tell stories. Like, you're gonna have characters always sneaking around. It's always gonna be the same story, like, season to season. So, like, I understand ending the CRM arc, or, like, you know, ending that part to the arc where, you know, everyone's held captive and you're not allowed to leave and all that, because it got exhausting. You know, I think just trying to write any story, it got really exhausting. So I'm okay with them telling a story and coming up with a new threat. And I think that's the place that we're in right now. Is I want to see the next direction of all of this here. And I want to see when all the characters are eventually going to reunite and all of that. Because I feel like some people kind of got a little too excited about a whole reunion endgame thing, because I think a lot of people thought it was going to happen, like, right away. If you look at Daryl Dixon and Dead City, season 1 of those shows just started. And I've been seeing those comments a lot for a long time. Like, oh, in season 2, you know, Rick's going to show up and reunite with Daryl, or in season 3, it's going to happen. And I've just always said, like, that's way too soon. Like, AMC started these shows to go on for a long time. Like, there's just no way that's going to happen right away. But other characters, yeah, Morgan, I mean, there's a lot of characters out there, you know, having Dwight go on Dead City. There's a lot of really exciting things that you can do, but I think having the main characters from Dead City and Daryl Dixon reunite with Rick and Michonne, that's gonna be some time, because I think they're gonna wait for that story, like, whenever that happens, because obviously you have to reunite everybody, right? Like, that is where the story has to end. Like, you have to reunite everyone. It's just, when is that going to happen? Everyone wants to see all of them together. So I think telling one final story here with everyone is what, you know, what they want, and you have to build to that and earn it. But we sort of have a time frame, though. You know, Norman Reedus did say 6 or 7 years. So we can look at that and think, all right, well, Daryl's story, this whole era of The Walking Dead is probably going to end around 2030, 2031. So just keep that number in mind. Like, around that point there is probably when, you know, we'll get the Endgame series, or maybe before that. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see where that goes, right? So anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.